Did you know that the End of Stormlight Archive, it's somewhat written between The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance?
Actually, the ending of the entire series, of the 10 books, is somewhere in those 2 books. Not on the first page, but it is in those books.
And with the upcoming release of Wind and Truth, this has never been so important. So here are 10 key points from The Way of Kings, including how Kaladin's ideals were foreshadowed, that I was only able to cut up on a reread. And yeah, let's be honest, after spending more than 20 hours on Reddit, Coppermind, 17 Shard and Book 2, please be aware that there's going to be spoilers of the whole Stormlight series, Book 1 to 4. I haven't read Book 5, the chapters that are released, so that I'm keeping away, but please make sure that you've read those 4 books. There's also a little bit of hints around the Cosmere, but I've tried to keep everything really related to Stormlight and just perhaps knowledge that it's more open to the Cosmere. And let's start with the first one, which is already very mind-blowing, and it's around the number of heralds that are appearing in the prologue. It's not only that the prologue of The Way of Kings starts with one of the most iconic lines with Seth, Sonson Valano, truthless of Shinovar, wore white on the day he was to kill a king, but it's actually one of the most important parts of the story, as it will be repeated in every book from different perspectives. The night of the feast, the night Gavilar died. However, as it is one of the most cinematic scenes of the whole story, with Seth lashing and with him, boom, 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 consuming Stormlight in order to fool himself, it is easy to miss a very important thing. The fact that there are at least 4 heralds present at Gavilar's feast. And I'm trying to understand why Sanderson decided to do this, because we come from a prelude in which we see these heralds, and it would have made a lot of sense for this first-time reader to be able to connect those characters, but instead, the heralds are a piece of mystery that we only learn as we reread and we keep exploring the series. The 3 heralds that are known for sure that were there at the moment of the feast. One was there a little bit early and perhaps remained, and some have been theorized that were there. So the 4 ones that we know that were there are Nael and Kalak, Jezrien and Ash. For Nael, a dark-skinned ashes man who has an odd patch of pale skin on his cheek, and a thinner Alethi-looking man who kept glancing over his shoulder. This refers to Kalak. And then Jezrien, the king of heralds, is the one that it is drunkard, and that it is referring to his own statue saying, "Have you seen me?" Lastly, Ash or Salash has been known as being this herald that has go a little bit crazy, as all of them have, and it is now destroying her art. She is destroying whatever she can find of herself, and especially she's scratching her eyes. And we see a reference in here that Seth says about a statue that has those eyes scratched. And the thing here is that it would have been considered heretic for a statue to remain that way, so it should have happened close to that moment. However, the most probable way for Sanderson to write out the end of Stormlight is on an epigraph. So this is your signal to never skip an epigraph from Sanderson again. Now, I understand the drive to do so, especially when you read weird short phrases such as 3 of 16 ruled, but now the broken one reigns. Like, so many question, who is the broken one? Is it the one that conquers and kills other shards? In this case will be Odium. Or is it the one that was broken and shattered? This is Honor. Or is it perhaps the one that we don't know much about and that has been left broken, perhaps after Honor's death? Cultivation. I probably think it's more leaning towards Honor, as he was the one ruling here and considered the Almighty. And also the answer of Odium just seems so very straightforward. But the point is that the epigraphs are mysterious. So here we are. There are 4 epigraphs. Parts 1 and 4 are death rattles, visions shared by those about to die and collected by Tarvention's minions. Part 2 is a letter that Hoid is sending to Frost, and that will have an answer in Book 2. Part 3 are extracts from Jasna's research, the points that help her conclude that the Pashendi were the Voidbringers. And now, let's go and see what we can learn from each of these epigraphs, starting with perhaps the most mysterious and fascinating side of Stormlight, which are the death rattles. And the first thing that a lot of people miss is that these death rattles are not natural. They're created by Molash, one of the 9 Unmade of Odium, these minions. And we don't know much about the Unmade at this point of the story, and What we know we will discover shortly in a little while, because there are 4 that are mentioned that we are seeing in Way of Kings. Now Molash is a mindless creature, more like Force. When he's close, he will provide visions of the future for those that are about to die. And out of the 30 death rattles that we read in Way of Kings, there are 14 that have been hypothesized heavily, and we have a lot of evidence accumulated with them. So here are some of those points that there's just a lot of evidence, and I think are really interesting for those to share. The first one is the love of man is a frigid thing, a mountain stream, only 3 steps from ice. We are his, O storm father, we are his. It is but 1,000 years, and the ever storm comes. This death rattle, it comes really almost to the date in which the ever storm will come in Words of Radiance. Then we have another one, which is a very weird one, which is I've seen the end and I have had it named the night of sorrows, the true desolation, the Everstorm, which refers to the Everstorm. Then the burden of mine become mine. Why must I carry the madness of them all? O Almighty, release me. This is probably referring to Taln. And then we have a woman sits and scratches out her own eyes, daughter of kings and winds, the Bandal. This rattle likely refers to Shalash, as she is the daughter of the king of Heralds, Jezreel, and she, as we've discussed, has been known to destroy herself. We have then Resifia, the Midnight Mother, giving birth to abominations of essence so dark, so terrible, so consuming. She is here, she watches me die. We don't know really from when this death rattle is about to happen, but we know it's referring to one of the Unmade. And one of my particular favorites, and it is so mind-blowing because you see how Sanderson is just creating perfection here. We have, they come from the pit, 2 dead men, a heart in their hands, and I know that I have seen true glory. And these refers to Kaladin and Shallan returning to the war camps in Words of Radiance after falling to the chasms, especially since the chapter in which that happens is called True Glory. I'm not sure if this was first detected by Christian from the channel Lost in Discovery, but it is also now a predominant theory on Reddit, and I am more than happy to subscribe to that. And of course I would need to throw my hat in here, and here are some hypotheses on some death rattles that I really love. We have one which is a man stood on a cliffside and watched his homeland fall into dust. The water surged beneath, so far beneath, and he heard a child crying. There were his own tears. And this epigraph appears in the chapter where Taravangian is first introduced, and I kind of believe that it goes around himself. We see the extent to which he is able to go in order to protect his people, and there are 2 potential hypotheses here. One, that the tears are his from when he's more in an emotional state alongside his genius, stupid spectrum, or 2, that these tears are from his daughter who is now ruling Cabranth.
So this is what I really believe here.
These will potentially put Cabranth in a point that might be key to Wind and Truth in order to avoid Odium. And then we have another one, which is way more far-fetched, and I've never seen anyone talk about this, so let me know your thoughts. And it's the one, I'm called Mother, I'm called Mother. Why can I still hear the rain? Will it stop? And my theory here is that it might be Jasna. We've been hinted that Jasna really suffered when she was a child, and this really kind of reminds me of a phrase that a child would say. So I'm not sure if this is something that we will discover whenever we get to Jasna's point of view, but nonetheless, these are some of the most interesting death rattles in my opinion, and we have more, but I've left them to the end, and I cannot wait to share with you the points that really refer to Kaladin, so stick to the end in order to discover that. Now let's continue to other parts of those epigraphs, especially the letter that Frost is receiving from Hoid, and it's actually one of the most under the radar elements, I guess, or that I've seen, not only because Frost is a huge mystery, but also because it feels weird to first see Hoid seeking help outside world. And in a gist, in this portion we will learn that yes, Hoid is very aware of Reyes, who was the vessel of Odium Shard before Taravangian. And all of this is good and straightforward, but who is Frost and why Hoid knows so much? Well, it actually goes back quite a lot to the Shattering, a world-breaking, Cosmere redefining event where this godlike creature called Adonalsium was killed. But the same as with the energy, it cannot be destroyed, so it was instead shattered into 16 different pieces that took different parts of Adonalsium's personality: honor, cultivation, odium. Every shard we see in the Cosmere came from Adonalsium. And both Hoid and Frost, who is a dragon / shapeshifter, come from the planet Yolen, where both come from and where the Shattering happened. They know, they are aware. This is why Hoid says the race was bad even before taking the shadow of odium and becoming this new person / god, because he knew race, same as Frost did. And if this does not blow your mind, I bet the next point will, because there are 4 Unmade discussed in the book, and we've already talked briefly about Molash, and it's been discussed both on Mythica and on the diagram Mythica. It's part of the excerpts that we will read in another book, parts of Hessi's book, that it's kind of like a scholar studying the Unmade, that basically you need to be very close to Molash in order to perceive his value. Then we have Resphia, the Midnight Essence, who appears in the Starfall vision that Dalinar has, where he's fighting the Shadowlight creature. We also see Nargul, or the Thrill. Following Hessi's Mythica description, Nargul was known for driving forces into a battle rage, leading them to great ferocity. And this Thrill seems to be not very self-aware, because the Unmade can range between being very smart to not so much. The first time that we see him, it's clearly at chapter 12, where Dalinar and Elhokar are racing during the hunt, and Dalinar reflects about the thrill of contest and the thrill of battle, and both are references to the Unmade. And then Bo Adomishram, perhaps the most intelligent and most important towards the future of Stormlight. And we don't see her really depicted, but her influence has been visible since the first prologue of Way of Kings, because she is responsible for the state in which the parchment are before the Everstorm reaches here. A very interesting thing that I learned just going through the words of Sanderson is that someone asked him about the Unmade and how they are made, and the question was around the lines: as an odium Unmade, must it have been made first by another shard or investiture before it became an Unmade? And Sanderson responds, Raffon, we're gonna delve into the Unmade quite a bit in the common books, but Raffing. And there's been all the questions following this line, and it seems to be a really interesting theme. And there's a lot of hypotheses there on how these different shards that might have been broken or splintered might have been parts of what are now the Unmade. Mind-blowing, and an interesting point in which we see an Unmade linking to a part that was so incredibly epic is that Dalinar was almost swearing the first ideal as early as in Way of Kings. One of the most epic moments of my reread was really discovering this moment. He starts saying the 2 first lines of the ideal while battling the Parshendi, and it is fascinating to me to realize that this in this moment when the thrill is pushed back, like the combination of how he's learning and going towards being a Night Radiant, and also how the thrill or Nargul has been following him, and that 2 forces are clashing. It's awesome to me. And if you want more awesome but also sad, listen closely, because the moment I realized that Sanderson was author level writer and the origin of this video was kind of like really made was when I was trying to figure out why the hell was Tien so fascinated with rocks. And I knew Sanderson is not the type of writer that writes something and then it's a loophole or dead end and we never get into it. So when I started researching on the words of Sanderson, which is a Coppermind log of whatever Sanderson has said, and I've took a lot of pieces here already, I was shocked to realize that Tien was actually at the first stages of bonding a cryptic and therefore becoming a light weaver, and it just makes total sense. But at the same time, I hope it opens some questions in your mind, which we will resolve. First, one of the reasons why Tien was so fascinated with rocks was because he was able to see color a little bit different than other people. And he also had a really incredibly soothing and uplifting effect on Kaladin, which has been confirmed by Sanderson that it's very similar to the effect that Shallan has with when she's light weaving, so that you can influence a little bit the mood of other people depending on how you see them. And this is of course explaining a lot on why Tien was kind of like dispatched so early on. Some people might be noticing that he was about to bond a cryptic, but, and this is where my heart really breaks, if Tien was really attracting a cryptic, which was the big lie that Tien was living by. Well, Sanderson confirmed in 2021 that Tien was hiding a lot of a belief that he was not a good person, that people did not want to be around him, and he knew that people saw him as a burst of sunshine, and he didn't even want them to not see him that way. And that was really hard on him. And Sanderson said, as it is also hard on a lot of people who are like Tien. And I know that Sanderson will never see a video of mine, but gosh, that part, it really landed. It really made me feel incredibly seen. So yeah, thank you, Sanderson, for that. To recover from this emotional moment, a riddle, because we still don't know what happened to Tien's friend. Maybe it might be featured in the future. Another big thing that I missed, and in these lines, is that Elhokar paranoia was kind of justified because he was also beginning to be a light weaver. He was not only being suffering from the fear of being killed as his dad did, but actually he was being followed by cryptics. And it's in the Way of Kings when he see these breadcrumbs really amounting. We do see Elhokar saying that he sees things at the corner of his eyes, weird figures that disappear. His spheres are also going down, and on top of that, there are also mentions on how the shadows that appear to be following him disappear whenever Kaladin is close, which at this point, it's the fandom that hypothesized that it's due to the antagonistic relationship between the Honest Brand and the cryptics. But if Elhokar was also seeing cryptics, which was his lie? In 2018, Sanderson confirmed that it was a lie that he lived for so many years, that he was a good king. A lie that he started to confront later on, and just like, wow. And along these lines, more wow, one of the most amazing picks, in my opinion, is at the end of the book, in the epilogue, when we see Taln returning. Everything from Wit's conversation to the cinematic appearance to the beauty of starting the book with a prologue in which we see Taln being condemned, and it finishes with Taln coming back. It's just chef kiss. Although I think it is fairly straightforward to pick this up, that this weird, huge stranger is Taln, the struggle comes when you realize that Taln never broke. In order for the Oath Pact to be maintained, we only need one Herald to be there, right? But if one Herald breaks, everyone comes back and the desolations are repeated. Desolations are happening again, and we see truly this happening again in Words of Radiance. But Sanderson confirmed to us that Taln did not break, that we will find out what happened. If he didn't break, who did it? The most popular theory here is that another herald was killed and therefore returned to Brace. And we know that the mental state of other heralds isn't as good, so it's these heralds that broke and therefore desolations come. And the juicy part here is that a lot of people, me included, believe that this herald was Shallan's mom, and that as she killed her, she was the one to send a herald to Brace. In fact, in Words of Radiance, we see a chapter start saying the world was about to end and Shallan was to blame.
Paraphrasing from memory, but
kind of like it seemed like it was her thing. And going to the heat of the moment of the video and going to perhaps the things that really blew my mind the most and I think are most important. And yes, we're getting closer to how Kaladin's ideals were heavily foreshadowed in the Death Rattles. We see a point before that, which is around the lines of Kaladin being the only one called Child of Tanavast. There are multiple mentions throughout the story of people being being called Child of Honor. However, Kaladin is the only one who has a special thing to his name as well. And this happens in the first vision where Kaladin is riding the storm and he is called Child of Tanavast, Child of Honor, Child of One long since departed. And someone already asked about this to Sanderson, asking if there is a special significance to the fact that he is the only one called Child of Tanavast. And he confirmed, which is certainly promising, especially as we don't know much about Kaladin upbringing, especially on Essin's side, so his mom's side. We don't know a lot, but Sanderson confirmed in 2018 that Kaladin's maternal grandparents were not both dark eyes. So might this be a hint to a close relationship in kin to Tanavast? Not very likely, but it is like food for thought. Quickly though, Tanavast was the vessel of honor, one of the 3 shards are present in Roshar, and he was romantically involved with cultivation. And he, Tanavast, was killed by Ray, so Odium's vessel at the time. And the mind-blowing thing, and why I'm discussing it here, is that although we know for sure that Tanavast is dead, we don't know if Honor really is dead or if his essence is out there, similarly to what happened to Ray's and Odium, right? And there was someone questioning this to Sanderson, and he said that Tanavast is for sure dead, and that in order for us to know if Honor is dead, we will be knowing more by the end of book 5. So, and okay, let's get to the point that I hope just gets you so excited about Stormlight that immediately after this video finishes, you just go to these books and start reading the Dead Rattles again, because how mind-blowing it is that the first 4 ideals that Kaladin swears are foreshadowed in the Death Rattles. Let's go piece by piece. We have the first one, the second one, that it's foreshadowed in this Death Rattle. Above the final boy they hang, friends behind, friends before, the feast I must drink clings to their faces, and the words I must speak spark in my mind. The old oaths will be spoken anew. This rattle appears to be, from Kaladin's perspective, moments before he swears the second ideal, right, of the Wind Runners. The final void is the chasm, the members of the Bridgeford behind him, and the army of Dalinar that is just before him. The feast I must drink is talking about the stormlight that it is in the gemstones noted in the Parshan, the beards, which is like, and if this is not enough, all of this happens in chapter 67 in the Way of Kings called Words. Going to the third one, all is withdrawn for me. I stand against the one who saved my life. I protect the one who killed my promises. I raise my hand. The storm responds. This refers to Kaladin saving Elhokar from Moash, the moment in which he's wearing the third ideal of the Wind Runners. We think this because in the chapter 62, Words of Radiance, called The One Who Kills Promises, is where we learn that Elhokar had something to do with Kaladin's future, and that basically he's the one that is killing promises. Then we have the fourth ideal foreshadowed with this death rattle. In the storm I awaken, falling, spinning, grieving, which is one of the most emotional and heart-wrenching scenes I've read in Stormlight. So it really begs the question, if these ideals were foreshadowed, isn't ideal number 5 also going to be foreshadowed? I think so. And there's a lot of people that also think so as well, because although I realized that Kaladin's ideals were being foreshadowed in the epigraphs, it seems that more people has also realized, which I just love this community. And there's a death rattle that appears to be the most in line to what will happen, and is this one. Let me know what you think. I'm standing over the body of a brother. I'm weeping. Is that his blood or mine? What have we done? This potentially refers to Moash being killed by potentially Kaladin. And there's been a lot of discussion here saying that the 5th ideal, it's kind of like become, and that the arc of Kaladin will go towards protecting even from those that you love, and that his conclusion will go and transcend and killing someone that you love in order to protect all the people, which is so heartbreaking. And I hope this does not happen, because I'm not sure we can do this to Kaladin's mental health. Now, let me know what are your thoughts here. Hopefully you enjoy this. I did my best in order to become a scholar. I honestly invested so many hours. I hope it is helpful. Let me know if you want part 2.